it's unquantifiable, but you can realize the result, and that's a hobby. Doing something for the purpose of doing it, not for the money that's with it.
Just for the joy.
Just for the joy of it. Where do you lose track of time? Where do you create joy and energy? What's your win? We are back again. Corey Wirtz with me. And the way that we came together, first off, I was speaking at this event, and someone that you advised and is a really good friend of yours was hosting. It was, how many people? That thing was huge.
There's 4,000 people
4,000 people
on that.
Yeah. And we met because you're a smart ass and you were teasing me, I think, basically. I was like, I like that. So
we just sat down and made fun of each other for an hour and a half.
It's like, yeah, so we're bonded. And then we're at this thing called Dysfunctional Christmas. We're both big Christmas fans. And
Absolutely.
so Dysfunctional Christmas was basically a tradition that you'd started, and our friend was then hosting it at his house. And I brought Carrie, and Carrie liked you. So my wife was like, oh, I like Corey. I was like, well, this is interesting because she's not that peoply.
Now that I know Carrie, selective. I realize like that was a hard win. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, cool. And then you're from Canada. I'm like, well, I just got a cabin. You should come to my cabin. We'll call it Canadian Cabin.
Yeah.
We'll just have Canada here in the United States.
Yep.
Right. And so our relationship began with play. Like built a fire, listened to tons of music.
Built a deck out on the river. Used a chainsaw for the first time. It's always fun using a chainsaw.
Yeah, I remember you guys were just laughing at me because I'm just back there like just
we lost you to the
down.
woods for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, just felt it was fun. I was sweating heavily, but it was fun. I mean, we went for rides on the Can-Am, nearly lost our life because we let Cheryl, your wife, drive.
Which was
Carrie
a
said,
dangerous
I'm getting out. Carrie knew her win. She's like, I'm getting out. No, this is not okay. And Cheryl's like, you have to test the boundary. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's how you roll these things. Oh, they can roll? Yep. So, but it all kind of began with play. And this cabin really came about because I went to Italy. I feel like I'm going to talk about this too much. You're going to start making fun of Italy.
It's a good story. I feel it was like that pivotal moment where you realize that you could have play in your life and still succeed.
Yeah, I went through this program called Lifebook. You went through it as well.
Yep.
And we had our good friends. I was hosting a Lifebook session, and so it was a bunch of clients that were there. And our friends, Mike and Linda, were like, hey, why don't we take a trip to Europe? And Carrie and I had never been to Europe. I was like, oh, I guess we'd been to Copenhagen, but we didn't know how to travel back then. We were jet lagged the whole time. We're just youngsters. We just barely had our first child, and we walk up. It's the first time Carrie's leaving him overnight, and we get to the counter at Delta, and she just breaks down bawling. And I'm like, not sure what to do here. So I called someone that had raised kids. I'm like, can you talk to Carrie? Because you've traveled a lot. And we ended up going, and everything was fine. But they convinced us to go to Paris, and we had this amazing, amazing time. So like, we got to do a Europe trip every year. Well, eventually that turned in, let's do a summer.
Yeah.
And it was 63 days, I think, when it was all said and done. And that was the first time since I'd been married that my wife and I had spent 63 straight days together. There were no business conferences. There was no speeches. There was no traveling. Time. And good news, we liked each other. We still wanted to hang out.
Right.
It was magical. We drove up this road that the trees touched the top. You visited. And then we got to this gate, and it was like a cartoon character, this Italian dude with his shirt off and floppy hair, and his wife were there to greet us. And the next thing I know, we're like in the pool, drinking champagne, just laughing. It was like being in a fairy tale, essentially.
Well, minus the vampire mosquitoes in the basement.
Yeah, because you guys, there's like how many of you guys were all together? I'm like, just come stay at the villa.
This was
Carrie's like, there's not room for everybody. I'm like, it's fine, we'll work it out.
Carrie was texting the person that I was with, and she's like, I don't care what Garrett says. You guys don't want to be here. There isn't the room for it.
But we ended up having a good time.
That was my first touch on your logistical abilities.
Yeah. So not my win. But then I came home and I was like, how do I create or recreate something similar to that to create traditions and memories and moments along the way? And that's how this cabin ended up. And so then it ended up, that you and I start hanging out. Okay, this is an annual tradition. And I remember when you came out in December and you were there was a lot going on in your life,
it's a tough period.
Yeah. So I was like, I didn't know any of that, but I was just like a little kid, so excited that we're going to come play at the cabin. And so it was play that brought all this together, and it's play that will help it stay together. And a lot of times we crowd that out with our win because it's a checklist of things to get done. Excuse me for just a second. I know I'm interrupting your video, but it's because I'm really excited about this. Disrupting Sacred Cows, my newest book. It's new, it's fresh. It's about all of the things that have to do with our relationship to money, the things that hold us back, and how to, kind of peek into that, be able to resolve that. And ultimately, with the new economy and everything that's happening and moving so quickly, it is timely to help you to have more success in your finances. So go ahead and click the link if you want to grab this book and dive on in. Yeah. Those to-dos become who we are. Yeah. It starts to drain our energy, and there's a lot of things that we get caught up in that don't even really matter, but the world wants us to think it matters.
Absolutely. And there was still a learning curve with that because, it was a fast friendship. It was filled with play.
Mainly because I said, what's the best album of all time? And when you listed the same one that I believed in, Illmatic, I was like, what? Like, we're way too white to be saying Illmatic is the best album of all time.
It's a classic, though. Yeah. It's a classic.
And then Cheryl calls it Naz.
Naz.
That Naz album.
Yeah.
I'm like,
is that Naz album again?
It just makes me cringe every time she says it.
But like 2 years later, we're still laughing about it, right?
Exactly.
So, but what was interesting is, while we had that fast friendship and there was always play on the personal level, it definitely did get complicated when we decided to partner as business partners.
It's like, let's accelerate all our karmas in 1 year.
Absolutely. It's just compress time and get all the shit out of the way. And that was painful, but it was interesting because both of our kind of business modalities knocked play out of our lives for a little bit. Right. And it took us a while. And the thing that,
to find that flow.
Exactly. And the thing that I love about our partnership and our friendship is we don't shy away from the hard conversations. And we've had, and I think I said this to you, I'm like, we've been business partners for 1.5 years, but the amount of drama that we've had, you think we've been doing this for 10, 15 years, but we were just collapsing time to get it out of the way. And when we found our stride and started to define our win, not just in the personal relationship, but in the business relationship, then there was no separation between the two anymore.
Right. It was like yesterday, I had obsessed to the point of it was almost like a disease on what was the book name going to be. Like, I know when I land on a book name, Killing Sacred Cows, I couldn't. I was pacing. I was like, that is the book title, and and it was like, that's exactly what we were doing. Or what would the Rockefellers do? I remember being on the phone like, I've got to rewrite this book because that's what this book really needs to be about. Budgeting sucks. I was like, that's not a good name. It's not the right name. And it never really took off because it wasn't. But this name that we came up with, it was like, it was magical.
A mic drop moment.
It was like so much energy, and it's showing like energy is transcending time because all of a sudden how much we got done. We got cover design fully thought through. We had, colors all the way dialed in, where 5 Day Weekend was a book that we spent weeks and literally dozens of hours designing what ended up being a great cover.
Absolutely.
But it's because that wasn't 5 Day Weekend's not my concept. It was the co-author's concept. I was there to fill in the details of how you get there with the knowledge that I have. So again, not my vision, not my context, therefore more effort instead of finding what that flow is. And when we find our flow, we maintain that flow with play and we enhance that with knowing our win.
So and the things that typically require effort become effortless.
Right. And part of it is hard, easy versus easy, hard. Do the hard work up front and life gets easier. Do the easy work and forget about the hard work. Life just becomes hard.
Yeah.
People that don't take care of their health over time, that eventually becomes very hard as, they're just like constantly putting out fires and trying to be okay. Relationships, not having the tough conversations. So the magical piece that I'm really trying to get to here is it's unquantifiable, but you can realize the result, and that's a hobby. Doing something for the purpose of doing it, not for the money that's with it.
Just for the joy.
Just for the joy of it. Where do you lose track of time? Where do you create joy and energy? Like Aaron, I enrolled him in the fly fishing. He worked with me for a long time, one of my best friends. It's like he loved fishing and stopped fishing, but then I like, let's fly fish. And then all of a sudden, like, he could go on the river for 12 hours and not think it's anything.
I'm done after 2, but
yeah, I'm like, cool. I like it as a short experience, but he just loses track of time. And so, there's things like that happen. Like that meeting, I kept looking down at the time, knowing I had a webinar, but I was like, man, I wish we could just sit in this for hours in the like what that title of the book was. And it felt like play, even though it was work and it was also all those blurred lines.
Yeah.
Or even building the roast, which is this, art cart that I can pull behind an e-bike where it's got an espresso machine and a sign and a sound system and all this kind of stuff. It's like, we're going to use that in a YouTube series that we're going to be doing for like men on the street. And, it's like, but it was really built because I just wanted to take it to the playa at Burning Man and have fun doing it. And I've already served probably like a dozen lattes today with everybody that's up here, because it just gets everybody gathered around. It's a satiating experience where people are talking and enjoying, and there's no TV and there's no noise. It's just people. So it's like,
It's connection.
yeah, it's connection. And so that's a hobby. It's something that I really have, expressed through, but most people don't have a hobby because they're busy. And I get it. When you have kids under 4, it's tough. When you have a health element, it's tough. But part of the reason I think we stay stuck is because we won't carve out the time for ourselves, because the excuse of we need to do things for everybody else. And hope you enjoyed What's Your Win. For me, it's discovery on a daily basis, getting more clear about what to remove from my life, what to embrace, and define the rules of the game from my perspective. I want you to do that in your own life. So dive into yet another episode so you can get clear about your win, remove the obstacles and distractions, and have a better life and win before you begin.